You ever wonder what really happens after we die? This question has haunted humanity since the beginning, but what I'm about to share with you today was never meant to go public. This interview was deliberately removed, censored, and denied by both scientific and religious authorities. Why? Because what Dr. Raymond Moody revealed challenges everything we've been taught about death. If this message resonates with you, it's no coincidence. Click like right now, hit the bell, and share this video before it gets taken down again. This might be your only chance to learn the truth. We're all afraid of the unknown, and there's no greater mystery than death. It's the final taboo, the ultimate frontier no one wants to openly discuss. We're taught to fear and avoid this topic. But what if I told you that the biggest secret known to humanity is hidden right in this fear? Dr. Moody spent decades researching what happens when we cross that invisible line, and his findings are so extraordinary that they sparked panic among those who control the religious and scientific narratives of our world. We're talking about evidence that even the greatest minds in history couldn't fully explain. Einstein, Newton, Hawking, they all took their theories as far as they could, but they stopped exactly where Dr. Moody began his journey. Who is this man who dared to challenge the limits imposed on us? Dr. Raymond Moody is not just an ordinary doctor or researcher. Educated in philosophy and medicine, he's considered the father of near-death experiences. His book, Life After Life, published in 1975, sold over 13 million copies and was translated into dozens of languages. But few know that after his success, Dr. Moody was systematically persecuted, ridiculed, and isolated by the scientific community. His lectures were canceled, his funding cut, and his career nearly destroyed. Why? Because he refused to keep quiet about what he discovered in private interviews with over 1,000 people who had clinically died and returned to tell their stories. The material I'm sharing today comes from one of those rare interviews that managed to escape censorship, recorded when Dr. Moody finally decided to reveal everything, without filters and without fear of the consequences. What's most impressive about Dr. Moody's research isn't just the individual accounts, but the consistent pattern that emerges regardless of culture, religion, age, or social background. People who have never met from different countries report practically identical experiences when they die. From 5-year-olds to 95-year-olds, from die-hard atheists to religious leaders, from people in America to those in Asia, everyone describes the same process, the same feelings, the same stages. The mathematical odds of this happening by coincidence are practically zero. Even patients who had never heard of near-death experiences report seeing a tunnel of light, meeting deceased loved ones, experiencing a life review, and feeling an indescribable peace, only to be abruptly pulled back into their physical bodies. Dr. Moody found the same pattern in ancient writings from 2,500 years ago, proving that these experiences aren't modern phenomena or media-induced. So what exactly is being kept from us? Why all the effort to hide these findings from the public? In the forbidden interview, Dr. Moody revealed that the most disturbing part of his research isn't the existence of an afterlife itself. It's the fact that we apparently choose to come here. That's right. Most people who've had a clinical death experience reported in deeper, more private sessions that their souls made a conscious deal before they were born. They saw ahead of time the challenges they'd face, the pain they'd endure, and yet they chose this journey. This revelation completely dismantles the idea that we are victims of chance or a preordained destiny. Dr. Moody confessed, his voice trembling, "I discovered that we are the architects of our own destiny, and that truth is too powerful to be widely shared." Imagine what would happen if everyone knew that they're here by their own choice and for a specific purpose. And this brings us to the point that made several institutions try to silence Dr. Moody. Not all near-death experiences are positive. There is a dark side that is rarely mentioned in books or documentaries on the subject. About 15% of people reported deeply disturbing experiences, states of absolute darkness, feelings of infinite emptiness, encounters with entities that could be described as negative. Dr. Moody documented hundreds of these cases, but he was strongly discouraged from publishing them. Some people experience what we could call hell, he admitted in the censored interview, but it's not the dogmatic hell of religions. It's a state of consciousness where the soul confronts its own choices and limitations. What's even more intriguing is that these negative experiences didn't seem to be related to behaviors considered sinful by traditional religions. Atheists had heavenly experiences. Religious leaders reported darkness. The pattern completely defied conventional expectations, suggesting that what awaits us after death goes far beyond our earthly moral conceptions. Even more surprising was the revelation about the guides that appeared during the transition of death. In the forbidden interview, Dr. Moody explained that almost all of the participants mentioned encounters with beings who seemed to know them deeply. Sometimes they were deceased relatives, other times they were spiritual figures with no familial ties. The most controversial aspect of these findings is that these guides often revealed to people that they had an unfinished mission on Earth, and for that reason, needed to return. When I asked my patients what these missions were, Dr. Moody explained, they were never grand things like curing cancer or saving the world. They were often seemingly small gestures, being present at the birth of a grandchild, reconciling with a family member, or simply sharing a lesson learned. Dr. Moody came to a revolutionary conclusion. Maybe the purpose of life isn't measured by external achievements, but by connection and inner growth. This view poses a direct threat to systems that value power, material accumulation, and social status, partly explaining why his findings faced so much resistance. Why do most of us not remember these pre-life choices and missions? This question haunted Dr. Moody for years until he discovered a consistent pattern in the accounts. There's something like a veil of forgetfulness, he explained in the censored interview. People who return from near-death experiences often say that over there, everything made perfect sense, that they could see the full panorama of their lives and the purpose behind every bit of suffering. But when they come back, that clarity starts to fade like a dream upon waking. The most fascinating part is that this forgetfulness appears to be intentional, a sort of cosmic self-protection mechanism. Imagine remembering perfectly that you chose to face a trauma that you're experiencing right now. How would you react knowing you agreed to that experience before you were born? For most, it would be unbearable. In his most confidential studies, Dr. Moody documented rare cases of people who retained more vivid memories of their pre-life contract. The results were deeply disturbing. Those who remembered too much often developed serious psychological issues, he revealed. They felt trapped in a predetermined script, losing the spontaneity of human experience. Some developed severe depression because they knew exactly the purpose behind every relationship in their lives. One particularly striking case involved a woman who remembered that her son had chosen a short life to teach the family something. She was paralyzed by that awareness, unable to simply love him in the present moment, Dr. Moody explained. The forgetting isn't a flaw in the system, it's an essential feature of the human experience. This discovery led Dr. Moody to a surprising conclusion. Maybe true courage isn't about knowing all the answers, but about living the questions fully. It's like watching a movie for the first time, he compared. If you already know exactly how it ends, you lose the emotional impact of the journey. We choose to forget so we can truly live every moment, make genuine choices, and grow through uncertainty. In private sessions with terminal patients, Dr. Moody observed that many began to recover fragments of these pre-life memories in the final weeks before death. It's as if the veil is gradually lifted as they approach the transition, he remarked. Many express a growing feeling of, now I get it, in their last days, even if they can't exactly put into words what they're understanding. There are levels of consciousness between life and death that rarely get discussed publicly. In the forbidden interview, Dr. Moody shared data on what he called intermediate states, conditions where a person isn't fully alive nor completely dead. The most intriguing cases involve patients in a deep coma or persistent vegetative state, he explained. Many of those who eventually recovered described experiences of expanded consciousness while their bodies were seemingly inactive. They could hear distant conversations, observe medical procedures from impossible perspectives, and even visit family members at their homes. One documented case involved a man in a coma for 3 months, who upon waking was able to describe in detail the renovations made to his home during that period, something impossible to know through conventional means. The most disturbing accounts were from patients who felt trapped in what they called the gray zone, a state where they were conscious but disconnected from their body, unable to return or move on. Some described it as the most terrifying experience imaginable, Dr. Moody revealed. They were fully aware, but unable to communicate or affect the physical world. They could see doctors declaring them dead, family members crying, and they couldn't do anything about it. These cases led Dr. Moody to deeply question our medical protocols regarding death and coma states. I became convinced that consciousness doesn't simply end when the brain stops functioning in the way we consider normal, he stated. In fact, there might be an intensification of consciousness while the physical body's activity decreases. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the forbidden interview was the discussion about suffering and its cosmic purpose. The most common question I received throughout my career was, if we choose to come here, why would anyone choose to suffer? Dr. Moody shared. His findings deeply challenge our conventional notions of tragedy and injustice. According to countless accounts of near-death experiences, the seemingly random and cruel suffering we witness on Earth has a dimension that we cannot comprehend from our limited perspective, he explained. Dr. Moody documented hundreds of cases where people who went through severe traumas, losing children, extreme violence, devastating illnesses, returned from their near-death experiences with a radically transformed perspective on their pain. A consistent pattern emerged, he continued. These people didn't return with the simplistic idea that everything happens for a reason, in the sense of justifying the suffering. It was far more complex. They described a multidimensional understanding in which every event, no matter how painful, created waves of growth, connection, and transformation that reached far beyond the immediately visible. One particularly striking case involved a mother who lost 3 children in a car accident. After her near-death experience, she said, "I saw how the interrupted lives of my children spurred changes in hundreds of other people, inspiring people to choose careers in emergency medicine, leading to family reconciliations, even saving lives through increased awareness about road safety. It wasn't planned in that cruel way, but I saw how our souls collectively navigate these tragedies, turning them into growth." Dr. Moody stressed that this perspective doesn't diminish the real pain of human suffering. The pain is genuine and must be honored, he insisted. What these experiences suggest is that there is a larger context that transcends our current understanding. It isn't a justification for cruelty or indifference to suffering. On the contrary, it's a call for deeper compassion. He noted that people who return from these experiences rarely develop a passive attitude of everything is predetermined. Instead, they often become more engaged in relieving the suffering of others, with a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. This perspective poses a fundamental threat to ideological systems that use suffering as a tool of control, whether through the fear of divine punishment, karmic guilt, or materialistic nihilism. When people discover that they aren't passive victims of a chaotic universe or a vengeful God, but active participants in an evolving process of consciousness, the very foundation of fear begins to crumble, Dr. Moody explained. And systems based on fear can't tolerate that. According to him, this was the main reason why his deeper findings were systematically suppressed for decades. And you, watching right now, have you ever stopped to think about why this content reached you at this specific moment? In the censored interview, Dr. Moody revealed a fascinating phenomenon he called conscious synchronicity. People coming back from near-death experiences reported a constant feeling of being guided towards certain information, people, and experiences at precisely the right moment when they needed them. There are no coincidences, Dr. Moody stated. When something deeply resonates with you, when information seems to find you at the perfect time, it's rarely accidental. The fact that you're watching this video right now, despite all the attempts to suppress this information, suggests that your consciousness is ready to receive these truths. The most transformative aspect of Dr. Moody's research has to do with what happens to people who experience states of darkness and emptiness after clinical death. Contrary to what many religious traditions teach, these states aren't eternal punishment or irreversible condemnations. Even in the darkest experiences, there is always a way back to the light, Dr. Moody explained. And that way invariably involves not some external salvation, but an internal shift in perception and consciousness. Patients who went through these states said that the darkness began to fade the moment they let go of resistance, fear, and self-judgment. What we perceive as hell is often a self-imposed state of consciousness, he concluded. It isn't a place where we are sent, but a condition we create, and one that we can transcend. The guides mentioned in thousands of accounts seem to play a crucial role in this process. They never force the light on you, Dr. Moody clarified. They offer it. They wait patiently, sometimes for what we might interpret as eternities. One particularly moving case involved a man who had committed terrible acts during his life, including violence and abuse. In his near-death experience, he found himself in an oppressive darkness that seemed to reflect all the pain he'd caused. What surprised him, Dr. Moody recounted, was not the punishment, but the constant presence of a being of light that simply waited at a call, distance, without judgment, offering help whenever he was ready to accept it. This man said he remained in that darkness for what felt like an endless period, until he finally allowed himself to fully feel the pain he inflicted on others. The moment I stopped defending and justifying myself, the moment I truly felt everything, the light started to break through the darkness, he said. This observation led Dr. Moody to one of his most provocative conclusions. Perhaps the true purpose of human life isn't about being morally or spiritually perfect, but about expanding our consciousness through direct experience. What we perceive as evil or error might be an essential part of the soul's growth process, he suggested. Not to justify suffering or cruelty, but to understand that each consciousness's journey is unique and cannot be judged by external standards. This perspective fundamentally challenges the dogmatic structures that divide humanity into saved and damned, into enlightened and ignorant. The dichotomy between light and darkness may be an illusion created by our limited perception, Dr. Moody proposed. What we see as opposites might, on a deeper level, be complementary aspects of a unified process. Perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of Dr. Moody's research is the transformative effect that knowing about these experiences has on those who study them. Even people who have never had a near-death experience, but who deeply expose themselves to these accounts, often undergo significant changes in their relationship with life and death, he observed. Follow-up studies with doctors, nurses, and caregivers working with terminal patients showed dramatic reductions in the fear of death and corresponding increases in the ability to live fully in the present. When you understand that death isn't the end, but a transition, your whole relationship with life is transformed, Dr. Moody explained. Paradoxically, accepting mortality frees us to live more fully. Moody noted that people who truly integrate these insights tend to show consistent changes in their behavior. They become less materialistic, more compassionate, less concerned with status and external validation, more present in their relationships, and more capable of finding meaning even in the most challenging circumstances. They stop living for the approval of others, he observed, and start living from an inner sense of purpose and connection. Curiously, many also report a growing sense of déjà vu, moments when they feel as if they already knew something or that they are exactly where they are meant to be. It's like they're starting to remember fragments of their life plan, Dr. Moody suggested. And what about those who remain skeptical? Dr. Moody always maintained a respectful approach toward skepticism. Healthy skepticism is essential, he stated in the censored interview. I'm not asking people to blindly believe this information. I'm inviting them to seriously consider the data and explore its implications. He noted that many of the staunchest skeptics he worked with over the years eventually became the most passionate advocates of this research after examining the evidence with an open mind. The initial resistance often comes from fear, he explained. Fear that if these experiences are real, we'll have to rethink everything we thought we knew about reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. And perhaps this is the deepest invitation that emerges from Dr. Moody's research, to fundamentally rethink what it means to be human. We aren't biological beings having occasional spiritual experiences, he concluded. We're conscious beings having a temporary biological experience. This reversal in perspective doesn't lessen the importance of our earthly life. On the contrary, it infuses every moment with meaning and purpose. If we truly understand that we choose to be here, that every encounter and challenge holds the potential to expand our consciousness, how could we waste a single moment? If this message touched something deep inside you, it's no accident. Hit like, share it with those ready to receive this information, and subscribe for more content that pushes the boundaries of conventional knowledge. In the comments, share your own experience. Have you ever felt a connection with something greater? Ever experienced significant synchronicities or vivid dreams that felt like messages from another realm? Your story might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. When Dr. Moody was asked what final message he wanted to leave for the world before his own departure, his response was surprisingly simple. Remember who you really are. Beneath all the layers of conditioning, fears, and distractions, you are an eternal consciousness exploring the limits of the human experience. You are not alone. You never were. And the love you're desperately seeking out there is the very essence of who you are. In a world increasingly divided by ideologies, fear, and disconnect, this might be the most revolutionary truth of all. The reminder of our fundamental unity beyond the appearances of separation. And perhaps you, watching right now, have a crucial role in this great collective remembering. The question is, are you ready to remember?